So, Tony, standards. Here's Mr. Standards.
Thank you, John. Well, I wish I wasn't described as that, but thank you very much. Good afternoon. You'll be very pleased now. I'm going to give a very quick run through of the work we've been doing on standards, and we are still aiming to finish in a few minutes' time, because you've just got me and our wonderful program director to go on the stage this afternoon. So I'm here to just give an update on where we're up to in relation to the development of standards for age verification parental consent. It was a key part of the EU consent project that that the European Commission funded. And you've heard not only Duncan's presentation, but before that the ICO, and before that Canil, and before that right throughout the day you've heard reference to standards, and it's the one thing that everybody agrees about. They don't quite agree what should be in the standards, but they agree there should be standards across the board, and it's the one area of work that there is still considerable amount of effort to be done. In my day job, I run the Age Check certification scheme, so we test that ID and Age Check systems work. We are the certification scheme that is, the scheme rules have been approved and authorised under the Article 42 of the GDPR, so with the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK. And we also are providing the Digital Trust Framework certification as well for most of the digital identity companies that are going through that trust framework process at the moment. And that is really live. That is happening now, and we're expecting the first of those announcements to be in the next few days. So back to the EU consent. The key part of this project was about how you develop the trust framework that would sit around how the age verification and parental consent services would operate. And this is what was in the original documentation that we put to the Commission as how we were going to approach doing that. And one of the critical things that we decided to do at the very beginning was to develop the infrastructure around the EU consent based on EIDAS, but not entirely within EIDAS. And so we used the infrastructure, but we didn't do the whole thing within EIDAS, and that's a critical question moving forward, which I'll come back to. So the first part of that is the development of a trust framework, and deliverable 5.3 is that trust framework. It's directed at people like us in terms of certification, conformity assessment bodies. So the purpose of that document is about how we as a certification body or any other certification body goes about testing the organisations that provide the services. It's supported therefore by two underpinning standards, the first one being deliverable 3.4. And this is the certification requirements for age verification providers, and that really sets out how age verification providers can connect to the network, can connect to the EU consent process. It's open source. If you want to view and read these standards, if you lack sleep, then they are available for free to download on the EU consent website, and you can view and see all of these now. The other one is about parental consent. So the second part of our project is about how you do parental consent, and it does the same for that too. Now, and they're underpinned by a common vocabulary, because one of the things that was clear at the start of the project was that lots of different terminology was being used and lots of different ways of describing things were being used, and there was a need to sort of bring that together into a common vocabulary. What these aren't are finalised standards. So we didn't commit as part of the project to actually finalise the standards. What we committed to effectively was to write the first draft, a good first draft, I hope, but not to actually commit them. And the next stage is to look at what happens to them now. So how is this going to fit together? How is it going to fit with EIDAS as EIDAS develops for the European Commission and the Union as well? And when we did the original bid, we used this diagram, and our overall consideration was to add an additional layer to the EIDAS range of things that are part of that, specifically for children, and specifically to look at how you do parental consent and age verification. And that kind of leads me on to then looking at how we now take forward the standards development with these, very good working drafts that we've got. This is undertaken in the European Union by an organisation called ETSI, who effectively, the ESI team within ETSI, are responsible for all the standards that fall in relation to EIDAS. And so we've got those working drafts there, and they're ready to go. And that's the kind of next bit. But one of the issues we've got is that the working drafts that we have are built for today's EIDAS. So they're built for how it stands at the moment and what all the rules and regulations are around that. And of course, the Commission have already announced that they plan to move to EIDAS 2.0, and then from that then into EID. And you heard earlier on some people talking about that. So those working drafts will work for today's world, but how will they need to adapt in relation to what comes from EIDAS 2.0? And we haven't yet seen the standards framework for that. That's imminent in terms of the first drafts of that coming out, but we'll need to look at how we adapt to that. But then we've got this issue about whether we are actually going to go down the route of tying it directly and completely to EIDAS and EID, because one of the critical things about age assurance is, unlike saying, proving that I am Tony, proving that I am over 18 doesn't necessarily mean you need to know anything about me being Tony. Yeah, and that's a critical thing to remember and retain that throughout the whole process. So how do we maybe use the best bits of the EIDAS in terms of the really useful interoperability and nodes and function like that, but not get too tied into it being about identity? And there's a big group of people out there in the identity and world that just believe age is an attribute of your identity. It's a single attribute. So you establish somebody's identity and then you can share that single attribute. But actually, when you look at the technologies that are out there, there are many technologies out there that are emerging and developing. Voice analysis, facial analysis, all sorts of things going on out there that have absolutely no connection to your identity at all. And so you have to be able to retain all of that. There is work going on internationally. So then how do we take that work we've been doing here in Europe and build that into the international standards? So there's the ISO, IEC have just recently started work on an international standard for age assurance systems. And the idea behind that is it will help to make them comparable and measurable. And then we've got these future questions that are flowing at the moment. So are we, with EIDAS, are we just using the infrastructure, but not necessarily the full bureaucracy that goes with the EIDAS? It's quite a hefty thing to get through if you want to get through it. Are we, on the standards and conformity assessment, how do we maintain a relatively light touch, proportionate amount of conformity assessment for the risks associated with the age assurance processes? So our next steps. So this is out of the Better Internet for Kids strategy. We've heard it referred to a couple of times already today. And there's a particular paragraph in there which relates directly to this project. That there's going to be, from the Commission, this call for standardisation. So we're hoping they're going to say, these are some drafts, ETSI, let's take those forward and how that's going to develop. And how are we going to support those proving age in that privacy preserving and secure manner, which is, you've just heard Duncan talk about that, and that's very critical to our GDPR Article 42 approved certification rules. How are we going to strengthen those methods and how we're going to encourage market solutions? And that was slightly what was behind my question to Sunil. You heard me ask earlier on when I was saying, are you looking at effectively coming forward to the market with a single mandated, prescribed statutory solution? Or are you looking at supporting and encouraging the market to develop solutions, but doing that in a way which is certified against high privacy standards and stuff like that? So that's what lay behind my query there. Really hope that we are in a position where we're able to move on to the second phase of this project. We've reached the end, well, we're reaching the end of the first phase, and what inevitably flows out of that first phase is that there are, we've got the ball rolling, we've got it going, we've got a fantastic team of people, many of which are in the room here, that have been working incredibly hard on the whole thing for 18 months or so now. How do we now keep up the momentum of that, keep those people engaged, keep them together as a team, and move through the next phase of the project. So really pleased to hear from the Commission earlier on that they're looking at that as well, about how they move through that next phase of the project. Happy to take any questions, John, but that's my very quick overview.
Thanks very much, Tony. Does anybody have any questions? The obvious question would be, what would be the potential consequences of not being fully integrated with the... What would be the potential consequences of not being integrated with the... and advantages of not being integrated? I mean, the implication is that you could envisage a situation where there is a well-established system for identifying or verifying different individuals, and a separate system that only addressed age that would be equally acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a question of taking shortcuts. It's a question of identifying the bits that are relevant to the process of age assurance, because large parts of EIDAS, all to do with e-signatures and website authentication, stuff like that, aren't actually relevant to the process of age assurance. And so when you're looking at the depth of certification and testing you need to do in order to become an e-signature provider, it would be a bit overkill and disproportionate to apply that to age assurance providers.
But you could just, it could be bespoke then, and just do age verification in the way that essentially you're doing now.
Well, that's what we've written to be able to do that, and we've written the trust framework and done it in a way that is within the family of EIDAS, but it's not the equivalent of going through the full Monty of a e-signature or website authentication process.
I can follow what you're saying about age verification, that you don't need to link it to EIDs. But how about parental controls? There you need to go to. So how do you separate age verification and parental controls when you just want to do the age verification?
So we have put them in two separate standards. So we did explore the idea of bringing them together into a single standard. But what's one of the learning points from the project throughout has been that actually isn't the right thing to do, and we've kept them separate and kept them as separate pilots and separate parts and separate standards. So you're absolutely right, and with the parental control bit, there may well be a closer link to some of the more things in the EIDAS. I think the next piece of work is to explore where that delta is and where the differences are, what's relevant and what's important to retain. What will maintain confidence of consumers and the public and regulators and governments in that process, and what is overkill, what's too much. And you have to remember that EIDAS is set up fundamentally for governmental communications improving. And so what we're expecting with EIDAS 2.0 is that actually some of that early bureaucracy that is in the first EIDAS is probably going to fall by the wayside anyway, because I think they've now decided that it was a bit of an overkill for that, and that's hampered its take-up and hampered its adoption. But then as it develops, we need to then be there to be looking at how to pick the right bits of it out and how to get that to work effectively, proportionally at the right cost level, because there's big costs associated with it, and in a way that's going to get adopted by the marketplace.
Any other questions before we hand over to our leader? That's you, by the way.
Yeah, I noticed.
Are we not meant to call him dear leader?
There's a bad history to call him.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Charlie.